mercy of God is on full display in how he responds to Abraham. And it's a very strange response. This is really weird. Abraham says, how can I know that these things will happen? Verse 9. So the Lord said to him, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a pigeon. What? God responds to Abraham by giving him a shopping list of animals? And it gets weirder. Look at verse 10. Abram brought all these to him, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite each other. That's one of those strange verses where you go, maybe we need to dig in a little here, right? So Abraham not only went and acquired the animals, he cut them in half and arranged them in pieces opposite each other, right? Why did Abraham do that? What are we missing here? Well, this is one of those situations where the biblical author knew that their intended audience would already know what he's talking about, so he didn't bother to explain it. This is why it's important for us to remember that the Bible is not written to us, but it is written for us, right? Which means that to interpret the text properly in this verse or any other verse, we first need to understand what the original author was communicating to his original audience, right? And then, now let's talk about how that applies to us today, right? Case in point, what's going on with all these animals being cut in half, right? Well, it turns out this is an ancient Near Eastern covenant ceremony. And so it was commonly referred to as cutting a covenant. That's the language they would use. And actually, there are nomadic tribes today that still do this. Here's what's going on. So when an ancient tribal leader or a king, when they wanted to enter into sort of a formal agreement, they would take animals and do just what we saw, cut them in half, lay the parts across from each other, and just let all the blood flow into sort of a trough or a puddle between the animals. And then each party would take off their sandals and walk through the blood. And what they're signifying is, may what happened to these animals happen to me if I don't keep up my end of this agreement. Right? So you don't take a covenant lightly. This is a very serious and bloody affair. And so when God told Abraham to collect those animals, he didn't need to tell Abraham what to do. Abraham knew what was going on, right? So he went, got the animals, prepared to cut this covenant. However, in another divine act of grace and mercy, God puts Abraham into a deep sleep. And we read this in verse 17. A smoking fire pot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces of the animals. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram. So rather than requiring Abraham to walk through the blood, to have some skin in the game, God puts him to sleep, and God alone passed through the blood. And so no conditions were given to Abraham. God alone carried and confirmed the covenant.